Have you ever met someone who seems friendly, even warm on the surface, but somehow you get the feeling that behind their polite smile, they're quietly evaluating, categorizing, and judging everyone around them? Or perhaps, in moments of self-reflection, you've recognized this pattern in yourself, this tendency to silently measure, compare, and assess others without outwardly expressing it. This behavior, while common, is far more complex than simple snobbery or social rudeness. It taps into deeply rooted psychological patterns, emotional needs, and the way we navigate the world through judgment as a kind of internal compass. At its core, the psychology of people who secretly judge others often stems from a mix of self-protection, insecurity, and cognitive patterns formed early in life. Judgment, in many cases, is less about the people being observed and more about the observer themselves. From a developmental perspective, children learn to evaluate their surroundings as a way to feel safe and competent. A child in a household where criticism is frequent or where affection is conditional may internalize the idea that observing flaws, first in themselves, and then in others, is a survival strategy. They learn to scan for imperfections, to measure worthiness, and to anticipate threats or shortcomings. Over time, this skill, originally meant as a protective mechanism, can evolve into a habitual, almost automatic form of internal surveillance that extends outward, quietly judging everyone around them. In adulthood, these patterns manifest in subtle but pervasive ways. Someone who habitually judges others may experience a constant inner commentary, noting a colleague's perceived incompetence, a friend's choice of partner, a stranger's appearance, or a family member's habits. These judgments are rarely vocalized, which is why they can be so insidious. The person maintains social acceptability while privately engaging in mental evaluations. It is often a cognitive shortcut, a way to make sense of the world and assert control over its unpredictability. Life can feel chaotic, and judgments become a method of imposing order. In this sense, judgment functions as both a shield and a compass. It offers a sense of superiority, certainty, and clarity in a world that often feels ambiguous or overwhelming. But there's a hidden cost to this behavior, both for the person judging and those around them. Internally, it can create chronic tension. People who judge silently often live in a dual state. One part of them is socially engaged, warm, and polite, the other is hypercritical, scanning for imperfections in ways that heighten anxiety and reduce genuine empathy. This constant evaluation can prevent the experience of true connection. Relationships may feel transactional, filtered through the lens of approval and disapproval. The person may struggle to fully celebrate others' achievements or joys without comparison or skepticism. Even when outwardly expressing kindness, there may be a lingering sense of distance, a subtle barrier that prevents full intimacy. Emotionally, this pattern is linked to a complicated mix of shame and envy. When someone judges others, it can be a projection of their own self-criticism. By identifying flaws in others, they momentarily deflect attention from their own perceived inadequacies. Consider the coworker who internally critiques every team member's performance. Beneath the judgment, there might be a fear of being seen as incompetent themselves, a desire to control perception, or an anxiety that they are not measuring up. Similarly, envy often drives judgment. Noticing what others have as success, confidence, relationships, material possessions, can trigger quiet resentment, which then transforms into mental assessments of their character or decisions. In this way, judgment is rarely neutral. It is deeply intertwined with the observer's unmet needs, insecurities, and unprocessed emotions. Yet, this behavior is not inherently malicious. In fact, it often arises from the human desire for understanding and predictability. The mind is wired to categorize and evaluate. We are, in essence, pattern-seeking creatures. Secret judgment is an amplified form of this basic cognitive function. But when it becomes habitual, it can distort perception, making it hard to see others and oneself without bias. Life becomes a series of tests or evaluations, where the intrinsic value of people is overshadowed by their adherence to internal standards. It can subtly erode gratitude, spontaneity, and the capacity for unconditional acceptance. In daily life, the effects of this behavior are noticeable, even if the judgments remain unspoken. Someone who secretly judges might feel frustration during social interactions, even with close friends, because their mind is busy scanning for inconsistencies or weaknesses. Social media can amplify this tendency. Endless feeds of curated lives provide ample fodder for comparisons, criticisms, and mental ranking systems.
Professionally, a person may struggle with teamwork, empathy, or authentic collaboration, as the inner critique interferes with openness. Romantic relationships, too, can be impacted.
A partner may sense the unspoken evaluations, feeling that no achievement, choice, or habit is ever fully accepted. Over time, these patterns can lead to isolation, guilt, or anxiety, especially if the person is aware that their judgments are excessive or unfair. Interestingly, self-awareness can be both a blessing and a curse in this context. Many who judge secretly are not oblivious to the social or emotional consequences of their thoughts. They may experience remorse or shame for their critical mental habits, recognizing the dissonance between their outward behavior and inner commentary. Paradoxically, this awareness can reinforce the cycle. Guilt leads to further introspection and evaluation, which in turn heightens judgmental tendencies. Breaking this cycle is challenging, but not impossible. Psychological research and therapeutic practices suggest several pathways toward understanding and transforming this pattern. First, cultivating self-compassion is crucial. Secret judgment often springs from internalized criticism. By addressing one's own insecurities, the need to project critique outward diminishes. Mindfulness practices can also help, teaching the observer to notice judgmental thoughts without automatically engaging with them. When a thought arises, they're so careless, the goal is to acknowledge it without letting it define perception or influence behavior. This creates a space for curiosity and empathy, rather than default critique. Another essential approach involves perspective taking. People who habitually judge may benefit from actively imagining the circumstances, struggles, or emotional experiences of those they evaluate. This practice humanizes others, breaking down the mental barriers erected by habitual judgment. Over time, it fosters genuine understanding, reducing the unconscious need to assert superiority or control. Gratitude exercises can further shift attention away from comparison and critique toward appreciation, highlighting the unique strengths and contributions of others without filtering them through judgment. Finally, introspection combined with external feedback can illuminate patterns that are otherwise invisible. Journaling, therapy, or trusted friends can provide mirrors, showing where judgmental tendencies arise, what triggers them, and how they affect relationships. Awareness alone does not cure the behavior, but it initiates transformation, providing the opportunity to respond to the world with curiosity, empathy, and patience, rather than evaluation. It is important to approach this topic with empathy, because secret judgment is a profoundly human experience. Most of us engage in it to some degree. It becomes problematic when it is habitual, rigid, and intrusive. Recognizing this tendency is not an indictment of character, it is an invitation for growth. By exploring the psychological roots of judgment, understanding its emotional underpinnings, and observing its manifestations in daily life, we can begin to reclaim the space between thought and action. In that space lies choice, the choice to pause, reflect, and respond with awareness and kindness. Ultimately, healing from habitual secret judgment is a journey of self-discovery and relational expansion. It involves acknowledging our vulnerabilities, releasing the compulsion to control perception, and embracing the imperfections of ourselves and others. When we allow for this softer, more compassionate perspective, we create room for richer connections, authentic intimacy, and a sense of freedom in social interactions. The world feels less like a series of evaluations and more like a shared human experience, messy, imperfect, and profoundly beautiful. So if you recognize this pattern within yourself, consider it not a flaw to hide but a signal to explore. Observe the judgments as they arise, gently trace them back to your own insecurities or unmet needs, and offer yourself the same understanding you might extend to a friend. Transformation does not happen overnight, but each moment of awareness, each pause before judgment, is a step toward a more open, empathetic, and connected life. Secret judgment, after all, is a window into the inner landscape of the mind. When approached with curiosity and compassion, it can become a powerful tool for self-awareness and personal growth.